Are we live? Okay, I think we are live. Hi everyone, and welcome to another session. So today we'll be learning about various lifecycle methods that are there in React. Now this is a part of the React.js series that I'm running here. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Soham Mukherjee. I'm a software developer. Currently, I'm working with Google as a software development engineer. Before that, for 1 year, I've worked with Code Nation. I have been into ACM ICBC regionals 2 times, 2017 and 19, and I'm also a 6-star coder at CodeShip. What will I be teaching you here? I'll be teaching you about web backend, React.js, system design, cloud services, and data structures and algorithms. Now, let me start by talking to you about Relevel, what Relevel is. So many a times candidates face problem like they don't have proper degree that's needed for certain jobs, or they're applying for hundreds of companies but their resume is not getting shortlisted, or they are like they don't have proper connections. They're asking for people for referrals but people are not referring them, and they don't have proper connections in good companies, so that's why they're falling out. So if you're such a candidate who is facing these issues, then Relevel is the perfect solution for you. What is Relevel? Good evening. Relevel is India's first test hiring platform by Unacademy that will help you find job. Now you can get the job based on your talent and skills and not based on what degree you have, what network connections you have, and these things. Uh, is CodeBeyond channel going to shut down? Yes, I also heard that news. Yes, it's going to be closed after 31st most likely. So uh let's see, but don't worry, I'll be there on YouTube definitely. In some way or the other I'll be there. So let's see. Right. What are the benefits of taking the Relevel test? There are over 50 plus companies, including top startups and unicorns, who are hiring through Relevel. There are over 1,000 plus job openings across the domain: business development, front end development, and back end development. You might think that it's time cumbersome, it will take a lot of time to complete, or it will be very costly, but it will be completely free of cost, and you have to complete all the rounds within one single day. Like, it is not time consuming as well, and the scores will be shared to you within a week. And once the scores is shared with you, after that you are like the companies will be approaching to you. So that's the best part. You don't have to know people from those companies, or you don't have to get referrals. Based on your performance, the companies will be approaching to you if they find you a good fit for their company. Now, registration with Relevel, it's pretty simple. You can go to the website. You can find the link in the description below. Once you reach on the website, you can click on get hired, and after that you can select a test of your choice. Because we are running a React.js series, so I hope that you want to become a front-end developer. So you can click on front-end development test, and after that you can book a slot for your test. Now the number of slots is limited, so make sure you book the slots fast. After you have chosen a slot, click on next, and you will have to fill in your details for the admit card. Now you can enter, if you want a free sample test paper, you can enter my referral code here, Soham10, and click on apply and create your account. And if you have used my referral code in the previous step, you can download a free sample test paper in this page. So make sure you download that and check what type of questions will be there. And make sure to register with Relevel today. The link is in the description below. Also, if you haven't joined us on the Telegram channel yet, make sure you join us there. And if you, although maybe it's the last, but if you want to subscribe, definitely you should consider subscribing. And if you're liking the content, make sure you like and share it with your friends as well. With this, let me see the chat. It's going crazy. Is who said that all videos will be deleted after 30? We miss you, sir. No one will miss me, don't worry. You guys will not miss me. I'll be there on YouTube. Maybe not exactly in CodeBeyond, I'm not sure. Again, like, I don't want to spread anything false, but I also heard that it might get deleted, it might not get, or it something might happen. I'm not sure if it will be deleted or it will no longer be active, or it will be paused. Maybe it's paused, it's not deleted. So I'm not sure about that entirely. I don't want to spread any false information here. But in case something worse happens, don't worry, I'll be there on YouTube in some way or the other. So I'm pretty sure that you will not miss me. All right, don't worry about that. And you can consider that as some leaks or something that you want, but definitely I'll be there. Cool. Anything else, any concerns that you have regarding this change, See, I'm also not very sure. Like I heard today itself, and I'm not sure about what what will happen exactly. What's their agenda, or what are they looking at? But again, like there is the chance. Yes, I've heard of that. There's a chance that it will be paused, might be deleted. I'm not sure about that, but uh, in either case, it's okay, right? It's okay. Will videos be removed from the uh, uh, just uh, my YouTube channel? You will get to know soon. They have already deleted many videos. Is that so? I haven't actually checked the channel. There might be some videos that are deleted. I'm not sure about that. Of other educators. Okay, they're deleting. Cool, cool. Uh, your videos will remain on this channel. I'm not sure. To be honest, I'm also not sure. I've heard this news today itself. I'm not sure about what's the strategy that will be adopted. Will all the videos be deleted? Will is it just that it will be paused for some time and then resumed, or is it like it will never be continued again? I'm not sure about the strategy here. So we can wait and find out, like, or I'll try to give an update as soon as I have one. But definitely we'll see. What is the reason? Well, I cannot disclose those things, right? But yeah, like there are some reasons maybe. But yeah, like I myself am not clear about everything. So let's see, let's just enjoy them for the last few days, and revenue source maybe, yes. So don't worry about that. I'll not leave YouTube anytime soon, so you don't have to worry about like missing me. I'll definitely be here. But regarding about the future of this channel, yes, I don't know about that. Which should I use, Node or PHP? um which backend should you use, Node or PHP? It completely depends on the project, because see, both has market. Node is more recent. The market of Node is more right now. So if you are going with respect to market, I would definitely say go with Node. But again, like PHP also has a good market, so you may want to go with PHP because it's a bit simpler as well. But definitely, if you want to go with market or with the recent tech stack that companies are using, um, I would say Node. Will React be continued in Fiv? भाई जल्दी से videos download. Will React be continued in Feb? I'm not sure if the channel is closed. If what I'm hearing from you guys as well, many things. So yeah, like if everything is true, then most likely it's not going to be continued. But again, I'm not sure about the entire strategy here. Let me confirm, because if I tell something right now that hey, it will not be continued, or hey, it is continued, then if that doesn't happen, that then it's wrong from my end as well. So I cannot give you information without knowing the entire scenario, what will be the strategy after this. But definitely there will be some changes. There will be some major changes that I've heard of. Maybe the thing that you're assuming might be correct, but might not be correct as well. So we are working on that. Let's see what we can do. And I'll definitely, once I get any information, I'll definitely update you on the same. So just enjoy for the last few days, and even not here, somewhere else. See, that's the idea, right? Even not here, somewhere else, I'll be there. Don't worry about that. Official, yes, yes. Uh, okay, that's good to hear. Don't panic, but don't panic. Slowly, if you want to get the videos downloaded, do download them. Definitely, it will help you out if you want to do that. But again, we don't know what videos will be kept, if it will be kept, if it will be stopped, if the entire channel will be deleted, if everything will be deleted. I'm not sure about everything, but let's see. Let's wait and figure it out, right? Cool. Let's focus on today's agenda, right? So we'll be focusing on today's agenda, that is, we'll be talking about lifecycle methods. But before we talk about lifecycle methods, let me just quickly go to the documents first app. Let me just do npm start quickly, start our development server. So before we talk about lifecycle methods, what I want to do here is which app? Okay, you can just google this up, right? There are multiple ways to download. Okay, anyways, let's focus on this, right? What we have done yesterday, we had created a dynamic list of fruits, right? So we could add fruits. Now what I want to do here is I want to add a functionality that we can delete fruits as well. I think that I had given you as a homework, but I'm pretty sure no one has done it. If anyone has, then it's pretty great. But if you haven't, that's totally fine as well. So let's just wait. The server hasn't started yet. It's still starting. Okay, let's wait for it to start. Meanwhile, let's focus on writing the code for this. I'll definitely see. Definitely, that's my first priority, to not get the videos deleted. But to be honest, I don't own this channel, right? I cannot do anything to change their mind. So as I'm saying, I'm not sure if the videos will be deleted, if something else will be done. I'm not sure about those things. So I don't want to comment anything right now. So let's figure it out. We'll figure it out together. In case the worst happens, maybe it's good idea to have a backup plan with you guys. But in case it doesn't happen, definitely it's advantage for all of us, right? So we'll see. But just like it said, now prevention is better than cure, right? So just instead of thinking about the final outcome, just maybe take a measure right now. Maybe what you guys are doing, download the videos if you can. Definitely you should consider doing that if you want to, but don't worry about that. Like it's fine, it's totally fine. So we can add lists like this, right? On which post you are working, sir? I'm just an educator. Download ho jayega. Okay, bro, you taught us so well, even better than paid course. Somo, don't worry, I'll be there on YouTube. As I said, not this way, then some other way. I'll be there on YouTube, don't worry. And I'll keep on bringing content to you. I have some news, but I cannot share them right now. So let's just wait out for everything to be official, and then also I'll also like share everything that I have. So let's wait it out, right? Let's just enjoy the last couple of days. If it is the last couple of days, let's just enjoy that and then figure it out together. Cool. Don't worry about these things. Anyways, we can add fruits like this dynamically, as we have seen. Let's come back to the class, because we are already way ahead of time. Like we can add fruits like this, mango, watermelon, like this. So we saw that how to write the code for this was basically what we did here. Let's just quickly go through this. We have a fruit basket. That's the main controller that's working. It has the state defined. So we know that if we have multiple components and we want some interaction to happen between them, like as we have here, we have a component called add fruit that contains the input and the button, and also we have a component called fruit display that displays the list of fruits. So the add fruit will be adding fruits to the basket. The fruit display will be displaying fruits from the basket, right, that are there in the basket. So there should be interaction between them, or a state should be shared between them, right? So we know that whenever we have to share some state between them, what we should do, we should lift them up to their lowest common ancestor. We should lift them up to their lowest common ancestor. So in our case, we have a common parent for both of them, right? Fruit basket will also contain the add fruit, and it will also contain the fruit display. It will contain both the things. So the lowest common ancestor is the parent itself. So we will add the state to the parent. We'll add the state to the parent. How will we then pass the data? We know that we can pass the data as prop, right? We can pass the data as prop, but how do we pass the changing of the state, or the event or the function that will handle the change of the state? So we can also pass behavior. This is called a behavior, right? Behavior means it will do something. So we can also pass behaviors in props. So what we can do is we can pass a behavior called handle click, which will be a function that will receive a fruit, and it will set the fruits to the new, add the fruit to the list. So that's basically, we can add behaviors like this as well, right? What is the use case of React? Hi bro, you're covering advanced React JS as well. Let's see. Definitely that was the aim, but if not here, somewhere else, definitely. Chandan Kumar, what's the main use case of React Native? React Native is for Android or cross-platform development. Like if you're developing mobile applications, in that case, you can use React Native. React JS is for web development. If you want to develop websites, then you can use React.js. So React Native is for mobile development. It's a app development, cross-platform app development library, right? And React.js is a web development library. It will help you develop websites, mostly the front end of websites, right? So That's the difference between React Native and React.js. Why is React popular? Maybe because of React Native as well, because some syntax in React Native, although it's very different, but the syntaxes are very similar. So that's why it's useful, because if you just learn the syntax, then you can just learn the corresponding things that are changing in both of them, right? Like how do you work here versus how do you work there. You can just learn those differences, and then you actually know both web development as well as app development. So that's why maybe people prefer using React or React Native. But we have discussed the advantages of React.js, like with respect to web development. We have already discussed what are the advantages of React.js, right? So and I haven't considered React Native being one of them, definitely, because yeah, why not? Why should I? Anyways, we can render a list of fruits like this. Now what we want to do here is, see, we have the list of fruits here, right? We have the list of fruits here, mango, apple, watermelon. What I want to do is I want to add a delete button beside each of them, right? I want to add a delete button beside each of them. On clicking that delete button, it should delete the fruit as well. But before we do that, let's actually see how React optimizes this adding of fruits, right? So if we go to this, and we can just go to this section, like how is this changing? Just see what happens, what is actually changing when we add a fruit. Although what we are actually doing here, we are updating this entire set. We are updating this entire set fruits. We are setting a new array altogether, right? We are copying the existing fruits and adding a fruit to this. So we are actually creating a new array altogether. We are passing a new array altogether to set fruits. So that means that's a new array, right? So it should re-render this entire thing as a new array is created. It should re-render this entire fruit display part. It should re-render all the fruits, but it doesn't re-render. Why? Because virtual DOM is in play. Virtual DOM will do a diff operation and see what are the changes, and it will only re-render the changed parts. So let's say if I add here, let's give it a value, let's say something, tell anything, mango, apple, guava, right? Let's say we want to add guava. If I just add the fruit, just see what is changing. Just a new list item got added, right? These didn't change. This entire thing didn't change. Only a new list item was added. Let's see again. Just look at this part carefully. Look at this part carefully. We are adding lychee. So just add lychee here, add fruit. Just see a new fruit is just added. Nothing else is changing. So how is this happening? Although we are creating a new array altogether, we are setting a new array as the state. But that doesn't matter. Like the state, what is changing in the state, it doesn't matter. What matters, it will render the complete changed version of the UI, right? It will re-render everything. But it will re-render everything in the virtual DOM. Now in the virtual DOM, it will do a diff operation that this is the updated version, this is the previous version. What is the difference? It will find that only lychee is getting added in the list. So what it will do, it will just update that. It will just update this lychee into the list, add this lychee into the list, and that's how it optimizes this thing. Right, that's how it optimizes this thing. Now let's try to add a delete button, right? Let's do that. So what we want to do here, first let's just add a button, and then we'll look into the functionality. So here, for each fruit, we just don't want to have this fruit name to be there. We want a delete button as well. So maybe what we can do here, we can add some more code here that this is not just it. We want some other things. We want a div, and in this div, we want a span with the name, that is the fruit name, it will be there, fruit. And after that, we want a button as well, right? We want a button as well that will contain the text delete, right? And let's give it a margin. So what will give it a style, and we can give it some margin like this, margin right, margin left, sorry, margin left will be, let's say 10 pixel, right? Margin left will be 10 pixel. So let's see what happens here now. So we have saved this file. Yes, we have saved this file. Okay, we don't have, maybe we have the buttons, but it's not displayed. Is that so? Let's see. So let's add a fruit here, watermelon, and see what happens. Okay, we have this delete button now, right? We have this delete button now, although it doesn't work right now. Definitely it will not work right now, but we have the delete button. Okay, we have the delete button. Also, one more thing, when you are adding a fruit, see the text remains here, right? The text remains here. So if you want to get rid of the text, whenever you click on add fruit, you can actually do something. about this. So what you can do is on click, you can definitely do handle click. You can call handle click with the fruit name, but additionally you can do one more thing, right? You can do one more thing here. That is, you can just set the set fruit name to an empty string. You can just do this, right? So in this case, whenever you add a fruit, let's say you are adding a fruit, right? Let's add a fruit here. Let's say mango. We'll add a fruit. Just see, it will become empty now. This becomes empty. So we can again like just write instead of deleting, like it looks much better with the user experience, for the user experience, right? So we can just do like this. That will set the fruit name to empty string, and every time we add a new fruit, it will just get added and this will become empty. Okay, now let's focus on working with the delete operation. So we have this delete button. What we will pass here is also a handle click method. So handle click will pass here. Now what it will do is, it will call handle click on click, right? With the fruit name, definitely with the fruit name. So on click, it will call handle click with the fruit name, that is fruit. What is fruit? Fruit, right? It will call handle click with the fruit name. It's doing that. Okay, now let's see how can we add this handle click logic here. So what do we have here? Fruit display. To this we are adding a handle click logic as well, right? We are adding a handle click logic as well here. So what it will get? It will get a fruit. Now what do we want to do here? Just think about it. What do we want to do? We want to remove this fruit from the list. That is, we want to filter out all other fruits that are not this fruit, right? We want to filter out all other fruits that is not this fruit. So what we can do is set fruits dot filter card fruit. Let's call it current fruit, and we want to filter out all other fruits that are not this fruit. So current fruit not equal to the fruit that I have right now. So I'm filtering all the fruits that are not equals to the fruit that I've provided, right? So that's what I've done in handle click. Now let's see if this works actually. So what I'll do, I'll click on delete and see it is deleted, right? It is deleted. Now I can add watermelon as well. So the functionality is definitely working. Let's give a few more. So guava and add fruit. Okay, now we can delete mango and we'll see that we have watermelon and guava, right? Let's look into what happens in the DOM, right? We'll see what happens in the DOM right now. Okay, we have this fruits are, and after that we have these. So let's just have this UL here and we'll see how does delete affect this entire DOM structure, right? So watermelon, guava, let's say we add something called lychee, right? So if I add this, it's added, right? It's added. Now I'll delete this. What will happen? Delete this. See, entire UL is getting updated. The entire UL is getting updated, right? Now let's add one more. Let's say banana. I'll add this. Only this is added. Only changes this is added. This li is getting added. But when I delete watermelon, see, the entire UL is getting actually updated, because actually not the entire UL is getting updated, but it is showing that the UL is getting updated because one of the elements is getting deleted. It is not able to show that it is deleted. So it's just saying that this is updated. But if you see, this is still remaining open and the first two LIs are not getting affected, right? The first two LIs are not getting affected. So that's basically why we have virtual DOM. It will optimize over these things. Right, it will optimize over these things. So we have developed this delete functionality as well. Like you can just keep on adding fruits. Let's say you can add a pear and you can just delete guava. So this is a fruit basket that you have built. You can consider styling it a lot, right? It's totally not good with respect to how you see it. Like the user interface is poor, but definitely it's functional, it's working fine, but you can definitely style it up more, right? So that's about how you can develop this fruit basket. Hello Skew, I'm doing good. What about you? Okay, how we can develop this fruit basket, right? Okay, let's go ahead with our class. Is this clear with everyone? How are we developing this functionality of delete as well? Is this clear with everyone? Let me know if you have any doubts. So if you want to look at the code, you can just look at it this here, what I've done, and let me know if you have any doubts with this. It's clear? Okay. Anyone else has any doubts, you can let me know. Otherwise we can move ahead with the agenda for the day. So are you guys liking, like, are you guys liking React? Because I think it's much fun, right? The idea being that generally when you write front end, when you think about front end development, you just think that it's not my cup of coffee, because it has less logic, or it has less like, there's a lot of HTML that you have to write which might not be very logical to you. But again, like, when you come into things like React, it actually becomes much more logical, right? Because you are adding logics here about how to handle things. What should you do when you are actually deleting a fruit, or how should you create a component that can actually delete a fruit as well, or how can you add a fruit to the list. So these things are, this is not a big example, this is definitely a small example, but you can think on these things, right? So definitely I think that's something that should be motivating you. So do practice these things. This will definitely help, right? And let me know if you have any doubts. Definitely let me know if you have any doubts. I'll try my best to help you guys. Okay, let's come back to the agenda, right? Let's come back to the agenda. So what are lifecycle methods? So any React component, uh, first of all, let's start with the class-based component, right? We'll come into functional components later on, and we'll see what how can we have lifecycle methods in a functional component as well. But let's start with the class-based component. In a class-based component, there are multiple methods that are triggered or that are called in the entire life cycle of a component. Life cycle of a component means there are multiple phases of the component, which is called the life cycle. For example, when a component is added to the user interface, or when the component is added to the screen, that is called a mounting phase. After that, the component might be updated, let's say the data is changing or something, so that is called the update phase. After that, sometime the component might be removed from the screen, right? So that is called the unmounting phase. So there are multiple phases. There is also an error phase when some child component or that component throws some error, right? Something wrong is happening, so that's called the error phase. So a component has multiple phases in its life cycle. In all these phases, certain methods are triggered, right? Certain methods are triggered in the entire phase. These are called the life cycle methods. These are called the life cycle methods. I'll give an example for you to understand better. Let's call the mounting phase. What is mounting phase? Let's say I have created this fruit list, right? Or I have created something. Let's say I've created a card. So when the card is added to the screen, when the card is added to the screen, that is called the mounting phase, right? Means when the component is getting added to the UI, it is getting added to the screen, that's the mounting phase. Now let's say the card is changing because the data is changing. Let's say the card is a user card and you have updated your name, so the name should change. So that is called the update phase for the component. The card component is changing, that is called the update phase. Now let's say the card component was there in the about or in the profile page. You are going to a different page, so the card component has to be removed from the screen. So that is called the unmounting phase. That is called the unmounting phase. How to study Spring Boot? By studying. How can you study? Just go through some resources or some books, and definitely you can learn, right? So these are the various methods so for example, in the mounting phase, we have multiple methods that are called. First method that is called is the constructor. The first method that will be called is the constructor. After then, there is a method called get derived state from props, which is called. After that, render is called. Render, we already know, render should return the JSX that render for a class component, render should return the JSX. So that's the render. After that, render will be called, and after render is called component did mount is called, right? So let's actually take an example to look into like this, how are they called, right? So we'll go to taskbar, we'll come here, we'll create a class-based component here. Do we have a class-based component? Counter.js, I think this is a class-based component, right? If I'm not wrong, this is a class-based, yes, so this is a class-based component, right? So we have this counter application that is a class-based component. So let's just add this to app.js. Let's remove fruit basket for now, and let's import so let's just import counter for now. So import counter from /components/counter. and we'll add the counter here, right? So let's just add this and see we have this counter application. Okay, that's here. But let's actually go to this counter.js and do something. What we'll do is we'll add some code here, right? What we'll do here, we'll do a console.log inside constructor, right? Console.log inside constructor. Similarly, once we come under render, we should do a console log again, console.log inside render. Okay, console.log inside render. So what were the other methods that were the static get derived state from props, and I think you get the next props here, and you can just do console.log and return null for now. We'll understand what this does, but let's just return now. Inside get derived state from props. And finally we have component did mount. So let's add here as well, console.log inside component did mount, right? So we have added these, right? So these are the 4 lifecycle methods that will be triggered in the in this entire flow. So let's just reload and look into the console. So we'll just inspect and let's see the call stack. So let's go to the console. Okay, first inside constructor. So first constructor is called, after that get derived state from props is called, after that render is called, after that component did mount is called, right? After that component did mount is getting called. Now let's understand the use case of each of them. Constructor, right? Constructor is called only once in the entire life cycle of the component. Constructor will be called only once in the entire life cycle of the component. That is, when will it be called? When the component is mounted. When the component is mounted, the first thing that is called, or the first method that will be called, is the constructor. So constructor will be called only once in the entire life cycle, and it is called when the component is mounted. Next comes get derived state from props, right? Get derived state from props, we won't be using this that much. Like this is not this does not have a lot of use case. It's something that's used very less, right? It's something that will be used very less. But the work for this is, let's say you want to update the state before you are actually going to mount it. You want to update the state based on the props that you have received, although you can have the props here as well. But let's say you want to update, just consider a transition component, right? So you might want to store that information about which I think this receives the previous props or the next props or both of them. I'm not sure which one it receives, but it receives either both of them or one of them. But anyways, the idea is that idea for get derived state from props, although we will rarely use this or maybe never use this, but the idea is, if you want, let's say you are creating a transition component and you want to actually animate that, like which one should be sliding in, which one should be sliding out. If you want to give such animations, then what you can do is, based on the props that you receive, you can actually, I think you will get the previous props as well. So you can actually return the updated value of the state. Like let's say you want to update the state, like which one should be coming in, which one is going out. You can return that updated value of the state here. If you return null, then no state is updated. But you can definitely return updated value of the state. Let's say you can return here, counter is like this, counter is 1. You can definitely return like this. So this will be the updated value of the state, right? So you can definitely return the updated value of the state. But in case you don't want anything to be updated, you can just return null. And we'll rarely use this, we'll never use this, to be honest. So that's basically static get derived state from props, right? The third thing that is called is render. Now render is not only called during the mounting or during the mounting phase, it is also called when we are updating, right? We have seen when we are updating, we have to re-render, right? We have to re-render. So that means we are calling render again. So render is not just called one time. Render is called multiple times when the component is updating as well. So render is the third method that will be called in the flow, right? So inside render, and we already know what is the use case of render. It is used for returning the JSX, what this component represents, right? It is used for returning the JSX. Let's come to the fourth part. Now this is important. Component did mount. It is called, this is important, it is called after render, but before the changes are made in the user interface. This is very important. It is called after render, but before the changes are made in user interface. So you have the screen, you have called render, you have written the JSX, but you haven't yet made the changes on the screen, that is the user interface. Before the changes are made, you are actually calling component did mount. You are calling component did mount, right? So component did mount is the last method that is called in this cycle. So this is for, what is the purpose of component did mount? Okay, let me ask you a question. Let's say you want to get some data from APIs, right? You are calling some APIs, you want to get some data, and based on that data you want to do something. So you should make all the API calls, right? You should make all the API calls inside component did mount. You should not make API calls in render. You should not make API calls in get derived state from props. You should not make API calls in constructor. The only place in the mounting phase where you should make API calls is component did mount, right? So let's say you want to make some API calls to load some data. This is where you actually add the API calls, right? This is where you add the API calls. Just remember this, right? This is a rule of thumb. This is where you should always add the API calls. What we can do is we can take an example to understand this, right? So let's just create a new file. So definitely we'll be using APIs, right? Because we are using the lifecycle method. So definitely we want APIs to be there. So let's say user list.js. So what we want to do is import React from React. So export default class user list extends react.component, right? React.component. What does it contain? First it will contain constructor with props, and it will call super props, and here we'll set a this dot state equals to user list, right? So we'll have the users here as the empty list initially, list of users that are there, right? User is the empty list here. After that we'll have a render method. What will this render method do? It will display the list of users. So it will return some JSX. What will it return? So let's have a div, or let's have a UL here, UL, and here we can do like this dot state dot users dot map. So what do we want to map? We have a user. What do we want to map? We want to map based on something, right? We can find this based on like what is the API that we'll use here. We'll use the GitHub API, right? So let's go to the GitHub API. So what we have is login, right? We want to display the login of all the users. So we have this login field. So we want to map them to their logins, right? So what we want to do here is li and /li, and it will be mapping to the user.login, right? Okay, this is what we want to do. Right? Now let's go to app.js. Let's remove the counter for now. And we'll import what? User list. So let's just use user list for now. Now see, if we run this, what happens? If we run this, okay, the above error occurred in div. Why is this? Because you have a mixture of default and named export. Something I've done wrong. Let's quickly see what has happened. So we'll go to user list. Probably here is the error that I've done. We have export default. Right? Let's just maybe do it later completely. So export default, export default and user list, right? Export default user list. So we have imported user list from this and we have written this here. Let's see what we have. So we are not getting anything. Okay, that was a different issue. So definitely we are not getting anything because we don't have any data right now. Now what we want to do here, we want to get the data, right? We want to populate this state users somehow. Where do we get the data from? We get the data from here, right? This API. So we have to call this API and get the data. So let's do that, right? We'll call this API and get the data. Where should we call the API? Should we call this API in render? No. Should we call this API in constructor? No. Should we call this API in get derived state from props? No. We should call it in component did mount. So let's have component did mount. And here we'll make the API call. So fetch. What are we fetching? HTTPS api.github.com/users. And what we want to do after this, dot then response. So we'll just for now use a dot then chain. So response, it will return response.json. So it will just return response.json, right? And after that we'll do a dot then data, and we'll set the state, right? We have the data now. What should we do? This dot set state, and we'll set the users to data, right? Users to data. This dot set state, users to data. Okay. What we can do here, this will take some time to load. Maybe we can add some loader or something like that, and we can do that thing, right? So we'll maybe do that later, but first let's understand this, what has happened. So let's run this first and see what has happened. So if we come here, see, we have the list of all users now. Let's reload again. So we have the list of all the users now. So how is this happening? What we are doing here exactly is we are calling the fetch API at component did mount. Now after that we are getting the response, and based on that we are updating the state. Now this is actually an anti-pattern that we are doing. What we are doing. Why? Because component did mount, having an API call and then setting the state in component did mount will again force the update. So it will again re-render the component, right? It is again re-rendering the component. But that is actually fine. Why? Because although render is called and after that component did mount is called, but the screen is not changed yet. The screen that we see, it is not changed yet, right? So the screen is not changed yet. As I said, component did mount is called before the changes are made on the screen, before the changes are reflected on the screen. So even if we call a this.setState and we call a this.setState, it will just appear as if it's a new screen altogether. Right? So we won't be facing any problem. Like, are we actually facing? Just see, if I reload, we are not actually understanding if it's a re-rendered screen or an existing screen. It appears to us as if it is the existing screen that we had, right? What we can do is, this doesn't look nice, so let's just take the first 5 elements. So to take the first 5 elements, what we can do, data dot what we can do, splice, and 0 to maybe 5, something like this. So we have the first 5 elements, right? Okay. So that's where we should, this is where component did mount is where we should make network calls. Just remember this, right? What else should we do in component did mount? If we want to add subscriptions, let's say we want to add a window event listener or a set timeout or something like the set interval, component did mount is where you should add these subscriptions, right? So let's say you want to add an event listener on the mouse. So you should, for this component only, right? So you should add it in component did mount, but you should also remove that when this component is unmounted. You should always close the event listener. If you have some event listener or a subscription in place, you should close that when the component is not there. Otherwise, it will lead to data leak. right? It will lead to data leak. We'll talk about that once we talk about what is removal of component or what is the unmounting phase. We'll come to that part, right? But component did mount is the place where you should have the subscriptions as well. Like if you want to add an event listener, let's say you want to add an event listener, so you should do that window.add event listener, you should add it here. Similarly, if you want to do a set interval, so you should do it here, set interval, right? This is where you do. Okay, that's basically a component. That's basically what is component did mount, or the mounting life cycle, right? That is the entire mounting life cycle. Let's come to the next part. That is, I think the mounting life cycle is clear with everyone. There are only 4 methods. What are the 4 methods again? Constructor is called first. After that we have get static get derived state from props. It is for making some updates to the state if you want to do something with respect to the previous props that you have and the next props that you will have. So you can do some updates here. The third thing that is called is render, and the fourth thing that will be called is render is for rendering, and fourth is component did mount. So it is called before it is after render, but before the changes are written in the user interface. So this is where you should make API calls. This is where you should add subscriptions if you want to add something. Anywhere else you should not do these things. Okay, that's basically mounting phase. Let's come to updating phase. What is updating phase? When your component is undergoing an update. When your component is undergoing an update. When does it update? When does the component update? When you change the state or you change the props. That is when your component updates, right? So when you change the state or you change the props, that is when your component updates. So what is the updating phase? What are the lifecycle methods? First is get derived state from props. First, that will be called, right? Again, get derived state from props is common to both the mounting phase as well as the updating phase. After that, another method is called, that is called should component update. Now should component update is also something that's not used often. Why is should component update used? Let's say you don't want to update your component for some cases. You want to stop the update of component for some cases. Let's say the data is same, or let's say something else, right? Some other reason you want to stop the update in some cases. In those cases, you should write that in should component update. So should component update should return a boolean value, true or false. Basically, it will tell whether it should proceed with the update or it should not proceed with the update, right? It should proceed or not. If it returns false, it will not proceed. Like all these later methods, render, get, snapshot, component, did update, they will no longer be called. But if it returns true, then all these methods will be called one by one, right? They will all be called one by one. So should component update is for deciding whether you should make the update or you should not make the update. After that, render is called. After that, get snapshot before update is called. Now this is also something that is very rarely used. What is the work of this? Get snapshot before update. It is actually for storing some information. For example, you want to store the scroll position, where the user is right now. After the update, you want to scroll the user to exactly that position. If you want to do these things, get snapshot before update is where you should do. And whatever this returns, whatever get snapshot before update returns, that is passed as an argument to component did update. That component did update can actually then do something based on like whatever is returned from the snapshot. But again, it is very rarely used. It is useful in cases like when you want to preserve the scroll position. Although there are multiple better ways to do these things, but again, you can use this. Let's say you have scrolled up to certain limit and you want to preserve that. That is where you actually pass this data. You will pass this data, and that will be received as an argument to component did update. And in component did update, maybe you can do some state modifications, or you can actually scroll down to that position wherever you are at, right? So you can do these modifications. Okay, so let's just take a look at these things. So what do we have? Let's go. So what we'll do here? Okay, what we'll do here? We'll add the update phase as well. Now get derived state from props is the first one. So let's write it as well. Static get derived state from props. It receives something, we don't care about that, but let's just do a console.log inside get derived state from props. And we'll return null from there because we don't want to do any state updates. Then we have should component update. should component update. What does it receive? It receives the previous props. It receives the next props, and I think it receives the previous state and the next state as well. I'm not sure about that. Maybe it does receive that as well. We can you can just look into the definition for each, but again we don't use this a lot. So let's see next props any. That's fine. Okay, let's just return whatever. So it should return true always. Let's say it's returning true for now. After that we will call render. After that we'll get snapshot before update. Get snapshot before update. It will have the previous props, maybe next props or something. Next props and previous props, next props, or next previous state. Maybe it receives the previous state. We can actually look into the definitions for each of them. Let's just maybe look into the definition. So lifecycle methods in React. Let's just go through this. So we can just look into the definitions for each of them. So what are we looking into? We are looking into update. So get derived state from props. It receives the props and the state. It will just receive the props and the state. So let's just make it receive the props and the state, right? What does should component update receive? So should component update will go into that. Let's go. Where is should component update? Get snapshot before update. It receives the previous props and the previous state, and and what does should component? It next props and next state. Okay, next props and next state. So it receives the next props and the next state. Okay, so next props and the next state, right? And it will receive the previous props and the previous state. Okay, we can just return null here. Maybe we can just return null here. And finally we will be calling component did update. Now component did update, what does this method take? It will take the previous props, it will take the previous state, and it will also take the snapshot, whatever the snapshot returns, like whatever gets snapshot from update returns, it will also take that as an argument, right? So that is that will be there. So let's just add console.log for now here. So console.log should component update, sorry, console.log inside should component update, right? Let's add here as well console.log inside get snapshot before update. So get snapshot before update, and let's add another console.log here. Let's add one more console.log inside component did update. Okay, inside component did update. So what we can do here, we can add a button. Let's say we'll add a button here. Let's just add that, right? So what we'll do here, we'll do this. We'll just add a button here. So let's just do that. Okay, button, just so that we can trigger some update, right? Button, and what it will do is on click, so clear, let's call it clear, right? So on click it will do something, that is it will clear the state. So it will do something. What will it do? This dot set state, and it will mark the state, it will mark the state that is users to be empty list. We'll just set the state to empty list of users. So let's go back to this, our application. So we have this clear button. Now let's go to the console. So for now, let's just render this, right? Okay, it has already updated. Why is that updated? Okay, it is updated because we are making a this dot set state here, so that's why it is updated. But anyways, we'll look into the next part of the update. So what we'll do here, just focus on this, right? Or maybe we can clear the console. We have cleared the console. Let's just focus on the update phase, right? We'll focus on the update phase. We'll clear the console now. We'll clear this list. See, first get derived state from props is called. After that, should component update is called. After that, get snapshot before update is called. And after that, inside component inside component did update. Like after that, component did update is called, right? So so what we can do here, we can do one more thing to understand this better. Let's just maybe reload. Let's reload this and we'll clear the console. We'll clear the console. What we'll do here is we'll do something. What will we do? One second. will return false here. In should component update will return false. Just see what happens. Will return false. So let's just reload this. It's coming empty because just clear the screen and see if I clear this now. It will just go up to should component update. It just goes up to should component update. Why is this coming empty? Just understand what is happening. Why is this coming empty? See, we are in component did mount. We have called this API, and after this we do a this.set state. We do a this.set state, right? In set state, we see that there are users coming. We have the users, right? So whenever you do a this.set state, that means it is going through the update phase again. Now, when it goes through the update phase, what is the first thing that is called? Get derived state from props. It does nothing. It comes to should component update. Now, what did I say about should component update? This is to prevent updates that are not necessary. So as you are returning false, it means that it will cancel the update then and there. It will not call the other methods. It will not call the render method. It will not call the get snapshot before update. It will not call the component did update. Let's do one more thing. Let's just make this a bit better or interesting. What we will do here is, we'll add a check here. If next state dot users dot length is greater than 0, then we'll return true. Or we can just return this thing, right? We can just return this. If it is greater than 0, then we should do the update. Otherwise, we should not do the update. That's what we are doing, right? What we are doing here, if the length of the users is greater than 0, then only do the update. Otherwise, don't do the update. So what happens? See, first of all, we are getting this list. First of all, we are getting this list of users. Now, I am going to do a clear operation. See, it is not getting cleared. Why? It will go to get derived state from props. After that, it will go to should component update. Now, in should component update, it will see that next, what is the next state? What we are doing, the next state will be, the users list will be empty, right? So the length, next state dot users dot length, that will be equals to 0, not greater than 0. So this will return false. So the update is not allowed. The update is prevented here and here only, right? So if you are returning false here, in that case, the update is stopped then and there. It will not get updated. Okay, let's just maybe allow update for now. So we'll return true for now. We'll return true for now, right? So what we'll do here, if we clear this now, if you see the call stack, get derived state from props. After that, should component update. After that, it will call render. We haven't added a log in render, so after that it will call render, and after that it will call the other methods, right? It will go to get snapshot before. Now see, after render is called, this is interesting actually. How you should actually allow, like how should you actually understand when to update a component, when to not? Maybe a good check can be whether the state and the props are equal. If the state and the props are equal, then maybe you don't want to update the component. So here, how do you get? You are getting the next props and the next state. How do you get the previous props and the previous state? Can anyone tell how can you get the previous props and the previous state? Very simple question. How can you get previous props and previous state? Anyone? How can you get the previous props and the previous state? Very simple question. How can you get the previous props and the previous state? Anyone? How can you get the previous props and the previous state? So the update hasn't happened yet, right? So definitely these dot props will give you the current props, and these dot state will give you the current state, right? From get derived state from props, not necessary. No, these dot, you have this keyword. So this dot state, what does it point to? Current state that you have. This is the next state that will be coming. It is not updated yet. So this dot state will be available. That is the previous state. Similarly, these dot props will be the previous props. So you can just compare between these dot props and the next props, and this dot state and the next state, and see if they are equal or not. Well, actually, we generally, as I said, we generally do not use should component update because there's a better way to do this using something called React pure components. right? So we will use pure components and it will just completely override this thing. It will not be needed anymore if we use pure component, but we'll learn that later. For now, this is what you should do in component update. In case you want to prevent some updates from happening, you can just maybe check the props and the state and the next props and the next state and compare them and disable some of the updates, right? Or prevent some of the updates. Similarly, in get snapshot before update, how can you compare what is the scroll position? You have the previous props, right? You have the previous props. So from the previous props, you can get, or the previous state, you can get what was the scroll position there, right? So that's how you can use this data. Now, if you were to make, if you want to make any API call, where should you do it? If you want to make any API call, where should you do it? Very simple. It's same as did mount. In component did update is where you should make API calls. So let's say instead of clear, it is basically instead of clear, let's say it is next 5 users. Or actually, let's just make it clear only, right? Or maybe next 5 users. But again, like that doesn't make much sense. But if you want to make some API call, let's say what we want to do, we want to fetch the remaining 5 users. Although this doesn't make any API call, you should actually write a separate method that will fetch and you will set the data to that. But again, like let's just do that, right? So next 5 users, what we can do is 5 to 10. We can do this, right? 5 to 10. So let's just do this for now. So let's see what happens now. Okay, it will come in this. Now let's clear this. Okay, see, if you see this, it is running infinitely. It is running infinitely. That is because you are setting the state. When you set the state, it is again calling component did update, right? So it is running infinitely. So you should actually prevent this thing. You should prevent this infinite number of component did updates. Or if you want to prevent infinite number of updates from happening, so what you should do is you should maybe restrict them in should component update, right? You should restrict them in should component update. But let's not do that for now. You can definitely restrict them, but let's not do that for now. We'll just remove the code from here. But you should restrict that. This is the problem I was talking about. Like what happens if you like make unwanted updates? You will see it is just making infinite number of update calls, because inside update you are doing a this.set state. Inside a update component did update, you are doing a this.set state. So if you are somehow forced to do a API call and do a this.set state inside component did update, make sure to add the corresponding logic in component should component update to prevent irrelevant updates, right? To prevent irrelevant updates. Okay, that's about component did update. Now here, if you see in the console, we haven't talked about it, but if you see in the console, there's a warning that's given: each child in a list should have a unique key prop. That basically means each child should be given a unique, like when we write like this dot map, everything in the list should be given a unique key. So li like this, key equals to, and we can give the key to be the user dot login again, right? So that's what we can do. So basically this prevents some re-renders, right? This prevents some re-renders indeed. Like it will basically then use the concept of virtual DOM to prevent some re-renders. So key is something that is used to prevent some re-renders. Now, one of the common anti-patterns or one of the common bad practices that people do is they write a code like this. What they will do is user comma index. They will receive the index here, and then they will set this key to the index. Right? This is a very common anti-pattern that people do. Why is this a bad practice? Just think about the use case of this. Just think about the use case of this key. This key is to prevent irrelevant re-renders. Now this index, is this fixed? As the list is changing, the index is no longer fixed, right? So again, like this is actually forcing more re-renders, unnecessary re-renders. So always you should try to keep some data that is distinct for all the elements of the list. You should try to keep some data as the key which is distinct for all the elements in the list. That is a very common mistake that people do. They will make index as index is different, so they will make index as the key, but that's the anti-pattern, because that doesn't prevent the re-renders. That in fact promotes the re-renders to happen, because the key will be changing. The key will be changing as the list changes, right? So as the list changes, the key will be changing. So you should not do that. So make something that will uniquely identify each of the elements of the list. Okay, that's about the update phase. Now let's come to the unmounting phase. Unmounting phase is when the component is removed. When the component is removed from the DOM. When the component is removed from the DOM, that is called the unmounting phase. Right. That is called the unmounting phase. Now, in component will unmount, what should you do? You mostly do the cleanup tasks, right? Let's say you have added some subscription, you have added some event listeners, or you have added some set intervals. You should close those subscriptions, or you should cancel those subscriptions in component will unmount. Otherwise, what will happen? We'll look into an example to understand this. So we will have to make a unmount call. So what we'll do here, let's go back to this part. Okay, we have this in app.js. What we'll do is we'll make this a conditional thing, right? We'll make this a conditional thing. So we'll add a state here, show user list. Let's show user list equals to use state, and initially it's true. We want to trigger unmounting, right? We want to trigger unmounting. So what we can do is we can have something like this, show user list. In that case only you can show the user list, otherwise it will not show user list, otherwise you will not show it. So you will just return null from here. And how will you control this? You will control this with a button toggle. Let's call it toggle, right? And class name will be button, definitely class name will be button. And on click will be set show user list, will be false, will be not of show user list, right? It will be toggling, right? It will be toggling. So let's see what happens here. If we add this, if we remove this, if we add this again, it comes back, right? So basically it is getting unmounted and mounted again, right? It is getting unmounted. See, when it is off, this will again be re-rendered, so this will not be there that time. It is getting unmounted. When we again turn it back on, it will again get mounted. So we can toggle this, right? We can toggle this like this. We will add the lifecycle method, definitely. Component will unmount, and in this case we'll write here console.log component will unmount. So this is triggered before the component is unmounted, right? So let's run this and we'll clear the console. Just see, we'll do toggle, component will unmount is called, right? We'll toggle again, component will mount is called. So we'll clear the console. Okay, what we'll do here, what's the problem? Like, why do we need component will unmount? If we come to that question, what we'll do here, in did mount, we'll add an event listener. Window dot add event listener. Let's say something called mouse down. Whenever mouse is entering, maybe mouse enter, and in mouse enter, what we should do is we should add a function that will do console.log mouse entered, nothing else, mouse entered. We'll just add an event listener here. See what happens. What is the problem here? So we have this event listener in place. If I enter, okay, if I enter to this part, I don't think it has been added. Window.add event listener, console.log mouse entered. Let's just add this at the first, although it doesn't really matter, but definitely let's just consider this. Okay, what we'll do here, instead of this, what we'll do here, we'll add to a state, we'll add to the state mouse enter and is false initially. And what we'll do here, we'll do a this.set state again, like when mouse is entering, what we'll do, this.set state is true, this.set state mouse enter is true. So see what we'll do here. We have this. Now we are entering this. Now let's close this. Okay, it's still not working. Maybe let's do something different. Let's add a different event listener. So we'll add an interval, maybe set interval. So we want to do something after every some seconds. So set interval, and let's add a counter here, right? Let's just add a counter here so that we observe the changes as well. So counter, and it's 0. So we'll add a set interval here. What we'll do in the interval, set interval, and it will call this function, right? It will call this function every 1 second. It will call, right? It will just call this function every, let's say, 1 second. So what we'll do here, this dot set state, this dot set state again. Actually, the best way to write this dot set state is also there's an anti pattern here. So we should always take the previous state here. We should always take the previous state here in a function, and then set the state to return. We should return the updated value, that is counter, counter previous state dot counter plus 1. We should always try to write something like this, right? So let's have this, and what we'll do here, we'll also add some h1 here, h2 counter, and it will be equals to what? This dot state dot counter, this dot state dot counter, right? So let's just go back and let's go here, right? Let's just go here. Okay, so counter 0, counter 1. If you see, it is getting called counter 3, counter 4. If we just do a toggle, it actually gives the error to us. What? Can't perform a React state update on an unmounted component. So what exactly has happened? Let's understand this. We have added an event listener. That is this method. We have added an event listener, not event listener, sorry. We have added a subscription. That is, we have added a set interval. What does it do? It calls this method every 1 second. It will just call this method that we have passed. It will just call this method every 1 second. Now, when this component is unmounted, this context is attached to the window, not the component. This gets attached to the window, not the component. So when the component is closed, when the component is unmounted, maybe Vednash, there's a very big possibility about this. Okay, anyways, if the component is unmounted, just think about this. If the component is unmounted, it is still going to do this dot set state, right? But the component is unmounted, so there is no occurrence of this state. So this makes a leak. This goes for a leak. That's why it is telling that it cannot perform a React state update on an unmounted component. So what we should do to prevent this, we should delete this subscription when this component is unmounted. So maybe we can add it to a variable like this dot tick. We can add it to a we can add this, add the return value, and we can do something like this. Here inside this, we can go for clear interval, and here we can do a this dot tick. We can do clear interval this dot tick, right? So now if you see the same code, let's just run the same code. Okay, we have this, it's counter 1, counter 2. If I just do toggle, it is no longer giving us the error, right? It is no longer giving us the error. So we should close all the subscriptions that we have in component will unmount. Okay, so that's about the unmounting phase. Now that's the unmount, like that's the update. So what did we learn about? We learned about the update phase. We learned about the mounting phase, update phase, and the unmount phase. There's one more called the error phase. So we'll not discuss about this yet. When we learn about error boundaries, we'll discuss about this. But there's the error handling phase, in which we have 2 more methods. Get derived state from error, which is similar to get derived state from props, and component did catch, similar to component did mount or component did update. Right. So available. I'm not sure. I'm very sorry, but I'm not sure about that, right? So that's basically all these things. So yeah, let's actually, now the question will be, okay, we have learned for this in the class-based components, but I have already told that class-based component is not something that will use a lot. What we will use instead is functional components. So what are the equivalents for these things in functional component? Definitely functional component won't have the methods that are there in class-based component, because it's overriding on react.component. So these methods are already defined. So functional components won't have these methods, right? What will be there in functional component then? So let's save the changes. Yes. And so let's create a functional component now and understand these things, right? So let's call it user list users.js. It will be a functional component. So function, how do we create a functional component? Export default function, and let's call it users, right? We'll call it users. Okay. Now to have the lifecycle methods, how do we get the core functionalities of React in a functional component? We have already talked about this. How did we get state into a functional component? Using something called a hook. We use the use state hook to get the state. Similar to that, there is another hook called the use effect hook. We will be using the use effect hook now. And actually it is very simple to write in the functional component. You don't have to worry much about remembering all the methods like component did update, component did mount. It becomes much simpler here. Let's see. So we'll import the two hooks, use effect and use state. We'll use these two hooks, right? We'll use these two hooks. Okay. Let's first create a state called user list and set user list, right? So use state, and initially it will be an empty list. Now let's just return for now. What should we return? We should return something like this, that we'll be returning something like ul. Also we will have a counter, right? We will have a subscription, so we will have a counter definitely. So counter and set counter will be use state 0 initially. Use state 0. So initially what we'll have, we will have h1, and after that we will have counter. Okay, after that we will have ul, and we will have the user list dot map, and here we will take all the user, and what we will do, we will do li. What we will have in li, user dot login, and we will give them a key as well, right? We'll give them a key as well called user dot login as well. User dot login being the unique identifier, right? It being the unique identifier, we'll use this as the key as well. So we have this code that will return a list, that will create this list of users, right? So let's just render this. So we'll call this to be import users dot from this, and instead of this what we will do is we'll do the users component here. So users, and let's keep the toggle button for now. It will come in handy later. Well, let's see what happens. So if we come here, now we have the counter to be 0, right? We have the counter to be 0. So let's just make this, maybe let's just do this, counter is counter. So counter value will be counter. So just to make it nice. So counter is counter, right? Let's do. So we have added this list of users. Now let's add a use effect. Okay, what is use effect? How does it work? So use effect will be a hook, definitely. What does it take? The first argument it takes is a function which is called the effect. It will take a function which is called the effect. So this function will be executed. Now when this function will be executed, that will be decided upon the list of dependencies that you pass here. Whenever this list of dependencies change, this function will get updated, right? This function will be called. Whatever function you passed in the first argument, and in the second argument you pass the list of dependencies. Dependencies means it can be like, let's say, counter. Whenever counter is changing, you should call this function. So you can pass this counter. Whenever the value of counter changes, this function will be called. Similarly, you can pass user list as this, right? So whenever user list is called, this function will be called, right? This function will be called. So you can pass the list of dependencies here. Now a question for you, like, what happens if we pass an empty list? Firstly, what happens if we do not pass a list? If we do not pass a list, it will be looking like, it is as if it will always update whenever a state or prop is changed. Whenever a state or prop is getting changed, it will call this as if it is going through component should component update is always true. So this dependency list is similar to should component update, whether your component should update or not. So whenever your state or props are changing, this will always be called. If you don't want this to be called, or you want it to be called only once when the component is mounted, you should pass an empty list of dependencies. This empty list of dependency will mock component did mount. This means that component did mount. Otherwise, what you can do is you can add a dependency, let's say user list. So whenever this user list is changing, that is kind of component should update, should component update. In should component update, you are checking if the user list is changing, only then proceed with the update. So something like that, right? So you give list of dependencies like this. Okay, let's go here. What we can do here, we can do the fetch call here. So let's just maybe copy this code that we had done here. So we'll just copy the fetch call code here. In fact, let's just write a ES6 one, right? So we cannot have this, whatever function you pass here, you cannot have this as an async function, right? So if you want to have a asynchronous code, you can create a new async function inside it, async fetch all users, and here you can do this async function, let's call it async function fetch all users, and you can call this function here outside. So fetch all users, you can just call this function. So async function fetch all users, what it will do, const data or const response equals to await fetch on the API. So https api.github.com/users, and then const data equals to await response.json, right? And you can just then set user list to be data, right? And that's done. So if you now if you run this code, now let's just run this code and see what happens. So if you see, you get the list of users, but we want to restrict it to the first 5 users. So we'll just do a data.slice 0 to 5. Data.slice 0 to 5. So we'll have this data here, right? We'll have this data here. Okay. Let's go. So we have this data now. Now we want to add the interval, right? So let's do a set interval here. Set interval, and what we'll do here, we'll add the callback. Definitely we'll add the callback. In the callback, what we'll do, in the callback we'll do set counter will be the value of the current counter plus 1, and it will be called every 1 second, right? It will be called every 1 second. If we do this, let's see what is happening. So if you see, it is subscribed, right? It is subscribed, it is working fine. It is called every 1 second. Okay, no, it is not called every 1 second. Set counter, why is it not called every 1 second? I think we have to pass the dependency as here, that counter, so that it is called every 1 second. Okay, let's go for this. So it is now working. Okay, but it is not actually working properly. So what we should do here, this is fine. I think maybe we should write a function outside this that will actually subscribe. So let's write a function here, const subscribe to subscribe counter. Let's have this function outside, and set counter is counter plus 1, right? And here what it will do is, it will do just set interval and everything. Set let's have this subscribe counter. Okay, or increment counter maybe. Is this the issue? Not sure. Let's see, increment counter. So we'll just have this. Now what we'll do here, we'll just add this code here to be increment counter instead of this. So we'll just pass here increment counter. Maybe this should work. Increment counter and 1000. Let's just look into this. Okay, no, something is definitely not working. Let's just reload. Okay, counter is 0 1. Okay, it's still not working. Why is this not working? Let me just think about this. It's called, it is definitely getting called, but maybe should we pass increment counter as although it doesn't matter exactly, but or maybe we can do something else. We can define this inside this only, increment counter, and we can just get rid of this dependency. Not sure why is this not working. Maybe we have to do the set interval outside, but it's working weirdly here. Let's just reload and see if this works. Okay, it's just going to 1 and then it's stopping, right? So what we can do is, the best we can do now is maybe we can just do this entire thing here itself, like increment counter. We can add this here. So set interval, and set counter, sorry, it will be a function. So in the function we'll do a set counter is counter plus 1, and let's call increment counter here, increment counter. So if we just, let's see if this works. Okay, it's still stopping at 1. I'm not sure why is this issue, but definitely it's something logical that I'm missing. But let me just think about this a bit. Counter. So if, let's add a check here, if user list dot length is equals to 0, then only call this thing, right? And otherwise let's just add a dependency on the counter as well. Or what we can do is, we can in fact we can use a different effect here. We can use a completely different effect here, right? So let's just keep this fetch all users here. We can use a different use effect. That's the beauty of use effect. You can have different effects for each of them. So you can create a new use effect here, and let's create a function here. Let's do that. So here it depends on the counter variable that we have. I hope that, I'm not sure if this will work. It shouldn't, maybe, but it will. What I'll want to do here, I want to do a increment counter, right? I want to do a increment counter here. So cool, that's fine. ये थोड़ा weird behave करेगा अभी. 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, थोड़ा weird. ऐसे तो नहीं करना चाहिए. Like, this is not what we should do. But again, maybe a workaround. There must be some workaround. Let me just see if there's a workaround. Like, definitely there is a workaround. So set interval in use effect. Definitely there should be a workaround for this. Like, I'm definitely missing something very logical. So set interval, set state, RLG state. Okay. Okay. Maybe it's talking about clearing the interval. Clearing the interval. Let's see if we can see. Use interval. Okay, we have use interval here. But I want to use set interval. I don't want to use interval. Okay, set interval. Okay. Anyways, I think maybe it's a problem of clearing it up. So let's just do that. Anyways, I was going to talk about it. So what you should ideally do is, you should let's just move this code inside and not do this. Definitely not do this. So what we should do ideally, like, definitely we should do that, is we should clear the interval, right? So where is component will unmount, or where is the, like, we don't have component will unmount, right? So what we should do here, we should take this as a variable. Let's call it timer equals to set interval, and what we'll do here is, we'll do a set counter is counter plus 1, and we'll call this every 1 second. But again, we should clear the interval, right? So this use effect returns, it should return a function. This use effect can return a function. This function is called the cleanup function. So whenever this component will be unmounted, this function will be called, right? This function will be called, this is called the cleanup function. So we can do a clear interval on this timer that we have. So timer, we can do this, but I'm not sure if this will work. Let's just do this. Counter 0 1 and it is stopping, but even if we toggle this will not actually cause some problem. I'll have to check why is this not working. Why is this not working? I'm not sure why is this not working. Let's see, set interval use effect, not working. Let's just keep not working. So the reason set intervals closure only accesses time variable in first render, it doesn't have access to the new time. Okay, time always has a values like set state, you are familiar. So what we should do about this function clock, react.use effect, we have a timer, set interval, set time is previous plus 1. Okay, and okay, const timer equals to window dot set interval. We are using set interval. We are also, this is what we are doing, right? Okay, set time will be previous time plus 1. Oh, okay, 1 second, change this line, previous time plus 1. So what it was doing here was set time is time plus 1. Okay, I understand now. So we should do we should take the previous time and maybe like then do that. I got the idea. So yes, like basically the idea will be previous counter, it will you can take the set interval, you can definitely take this here, set counter, and here you can take you can again, like you should not do it like this. So let's just have the previous counter, because that like it's going into a similar to a risk condition, right? So it should be a previous counter plus 1. It should be a previous counter plus 1. Now I think it might work, it just might work. So let's see. Yes, now if you see it's working. So basically that's because state updates are async, right? State updates are async, so you should not do like, that's actually a bad practice. That what we were doing, set counter is counter plus 1, but we should not do like similar to set state that we talked about, that we took the previous state and based on that we updated our state. Similarly here also in set counter as well, or set state in, or set state in functional component as well, we should take the previous state and then do a previous state plus 1. We should not directly take the current value of the state, otherwise it will just read the current value of the state only once. Like see, this is attached to the window, right? This is attached to the window. Now it will take the current, it will set this function in the first time only. So in the next time it will just get the counter as the first value that it had got, that was 0. So 0 plus 1, it will always just do 0 plus 1. So it was becoming 1, but now we have changed it to previous counter. Now that's, so we are basically in set counter, we are taking the previous version of the we are taking the previous value of the variable or of the state that it refers to, and we are updating it by plus 1. So that's why now it is working, right? So if I don't do this, this will now, let's understand the problem. If I don't do this, if we do a toggle here, it will again give that same issue, right? So that's why we have this cleanup function, that is, it will return the cleanup function, the use effect, the function from the use effect will return a function that will be the cleanup function. So in that you should close all the subscription that you have. Like if you have some intervals or if you have some event listeners that are added, you should clear them like this in the return value, right? It should return a function. So that's about the lifecycle methods. I hope that it makes sense. Let me know if you have any doubts. That's all I wanted to discuss for today. So you all are, I think you are all acquainted with the lifecycle method. So what you can do is you can maybe do some small project on your end. Maybe like okay, I'll give a project for you. Just make a GitHub card, right? GitHub users card. There will be pagination. You can add pagination. In one page you will display 5 cards, let's say. What will it contain? It will contain the login, it will contain the avatar, like whatever avatar they have, and it will, you also have to get the followers, number of followers, number of following, and maybe number of stars received, right? Number of starred GitHub repos. You should receive all these information and maybe display them as card for each users, and create a website based on that, right? So So I think now you do have the idea to how to get that done. So let me know if you have any doubts for on this. So we have covered all these things: get derived state from props, um, and get snapshot. It's for like to maintain scroll positions and those things. Similarly, gets derived state from error will be invoked after the error is thrown by one of the descendants. It's very similar to get derived state from props and get derived state from get derived state from props. So let me know if that's all I wanted to cover for today. Let me know if you have any doubts. Otherwise, definitely we can end the class here. If you have any doubts, and are you clear with the homework? Are you clear with the homework? So the homework will be you have to use this GitHub API, right? You have to use this GitHub API to create cards for all of these users. Like you can design the cards yourself. Like you can look into some good ideas, get some ideas from Google, right? What are some good ideas of cards? You have to design cards. For each user, you will write their login, you will write their avatar, you will have their avatar, like avatar is the picture that they have, and maybe some other things like there are a number of followers or number of following, and those data you can also bring, right? So let me know if you have any doubts on this. So that's all I wanted to discuss for the day. Anyone has any doubts except CodeBeyond बंद हो जाएगा, except that any other doubt? Except that any other doubts that you have regarding today's class, like what are life cycle methods? I know it's a lot to take in. Maybe you can just like go through the rewatch everything whatever we have done, maybe in 2x speed. You can just go through the important parts, but yeah, like I think you are ready to like write some proper code. So just try to do this, try to build something here around this, right? Add pagination definitely, because there are lots of users, so try adding pagination as well. Pagination means there will be multiple pages, like 1 2 3 4 5. You can click on a page to get the data corresponding to that page, so maybe add pagination as well. Yeah, so that's about it. If you have any doubts, you can let me know. Otherwise, we can end our class here for the day. So anyone has any doubts? Cool. I don't think if you guys have any doubts, we can end. So definitely make sure to share the videos with your friends so that they can also learn. And I hope that the videos are not deleted. Definitely, I don't hope that. Let's see what happens. So yep, I'll meet you. And also, like, I think today is Thursday, right? On Saturday, we'll have a very special stream in which there will be an interview duel between me and Subhash. So make sure you join there as well. It will be pretty interesting. Like both of us will be taking interviews with of each other. It will be a 2 hour long session. First hour maybe I'll be taking, second hour he'll be taking mine. So something like that. So it will be fun, right? So make sure you join there, and maybe you can get to learn something. Cool. I'll meet you. I'll definitely we'll meet on Saturday. Cool. Bye.